Chapter 1. The Silent Beginning. My name is Emily. I am 24 years old. I live in a small town in Ohio, United States. My family came from Mexico when I was a child. Spanish is my first language. I grew up hearing English everywhere, at school, at the store, at the doctor's office. People spoke English all around me. But I stayed quiet. I understood English. I could read English. I could write short sentences. But when I had to speak, I froze. My heart beat fast. My hands shook. My voice became very small. I wanted to talk, had so many words in my head. But my mouth stayed shut. I felt scared. I felt stuck. In school, I always sat in the back. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't ask questions. I remember one day, my teacher asked me to read a paragraph out loud. She said, "Emily, can you read this please?" I looked at the paper. My lips were dry. My throat was tight. I couldn't say a word. Everyone was looking at me. I felt like crying. That moment stayed with me for years. After that, I made a promise to myself. One day, I will speak. One day, I will be brave. But time passed. I finished school. I started working at a small coffee shop. Every day, I saw people. I made coffee. I cleaned tables. Customers spoke to me. They asked, "Can I get a latte? Or do you have muffins today?" I smiled. I nodded. I said, "Okay." Or, "Sure." And that was it. I never said more. I felt like a shadow. I was there, but not really there. I was hiding behind simple words. I wanted more. I wanted to say, "How are you?" Or "Have a nice day." But I was scared. I didn't have anyone to practice with. I didn't go to English class. I didn't have English-speaking friends. I was alone. But I still had a strong desire. I wanted to speak. I wanted to change. So one evening, I had an idea. I picked up my phone. I opened the voice recorder. I sat on my bed. I pressed the red button. I said, "Hi, my name is Emily." Then I stopped. I played it back. I heard my own voice. It was soft. It was shaky. But it was mine. That small moment felt big. I didn't feel scared. I felt something new. A small hope. A small light. The next night, I did it again. I spoke into my phone. I talked about my day. I said, "Today I was tired. Work was busy." I talked about my feelings. I said, "I felt nervous. I made a mistake at work." There were no rules. No one was listening. It was just me and my voice. And for the first time, that was enough. I wasn't silent anymore. I was speaking. Maybe not to a person. But I was speaking. Each night, I recorded a few more words. Sometimes I talked for 2 minutes. Sometimes just 30 seconds. But I showed up. Every single night, no matter how I felt. I opened my phone. I opened my mouth. And I talked. I didn't correct myself. I didn't judge myself. I just tried. Slowly I felt less afraid. I started to enjoy it. My voice got stronger. My sentences got longer. One night I looked in the mirror. I smiled. I said, "Emily, how are you?" Then I answered, "I'm fine. I had a good day." I laughed. I felt silly, but also proud. I was doing something new. Something brave. Speaking to myself became my practice. My alone time became my learning time. And I learned that speaking alone is still speaking. That was the beginning. That was when I moved from silence to sound, from fear to hope. It didn't happen in one day. But every day I took one small step. My room became my classroom. My phone became my partner. And I became my own teacher. Chapter 2. Learning to speak alone. After a few weeks of talking into my phone, I started to feel different. I was not fluent. But I was no longer afraid to hear my voice in English. I became curious. What else can I do? One morning, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked at myself and said, "Good morning, Emily. How are you today?" Then I smiled and answered, "I'm a little sleepy, but I'm okay." It felt funny at first, like I was acting. But it also felt powerful. I was not waiting for someone to speak to me. I was speaking to myself. Every day I added more English to my routine. While brushing my teeth, I asked, "What are your plans today?" While cooking, I said, "Now I add salt. Now I stir the soup." While walking to work, I looked at trees and said, "The leaves are green, the wind is cold today." My life became a classroom. My voice became my practice. No one corrected me. No one laughed. And I kept going. One evening I opened YouTube. I searched Easy English Vlog. I found a video of a girl talking about her morning routine. She was brushing her hair, making coffee, packing her bag. She spoke slowly. The video had subtitles. I paused after each sentence. I repeated what she said. I copied her pronunciation. I wake up at 7 a.m. Pause. Repeat. I like to drink tea in the morning. Pause. Repeat. At first it was hard. My mouth moved slowly. I didn't understand every word. But I didn't give up. I watched cooking shows too. I listened to simple podcasts. I liked ones with short sentences. I always used subtitles. I didn't just watch. I spoke with them. I made my own voice follow theirs. This is called shadowing. I didn't know that word at the time. I just knew it helped me. My ears listened. My mouth repeated. My brain started to connect sounds and meanings. Little by little, English felt less strange. It felt closer. I also started writing. Before bed I took a notebook and wrote 2 small paragraphs. Nothing special. Just simple thoughts. Today I made a mistake at work. I gave the wrong drink. But I said sorry. And the customer smiled. Or I saw a dog today. It had brown eyes. It made me happy. I didn't worry about grammar. I didn't check for mistakes. I just wrote what was in my heart. My notebook became my friend. A quiet friend. who always listened. For some months something small but big to me happened. A customer came into the coffee shop. He smiled and said, "Hey, how's your day?" I smiled back. But this time I didn't say okay. I said, "It's going well. Thanks. How about you?" He replied, "I'm good." That was it. A short moment. A few words. But it felt like a victory. I felt proud. I felt strong. I had spoken with confidence. I didn't hide. I was there. Fully. Of course I still made mistakes. Funny ones too. One time I said, "I'm very boring," when I meant I'm very bored. The customer laughed kindly and said, "Don't say that about yourself." We both laughed. I laughed even more later at home. But I didn't feel embarrassed. I felt happy. Because that mistake taught me something. I learned. I remembered. And I didn't stop. I started to enjoy speaking. Not just practicing but really enjoying it. My alone time felt richer. I would talk to myself while folding laundry, while tying my shoes, even while feeding my cat. I asked questions like, "What will I cook today?" And "What did I learn today?" And I answered them out loud. It became normal. It became part of my life. Just like brushing my hair or listening to music. And one day I shared a voice message with my cousin Sarah. She lives in Texas. We don't talk often. But that day I felt brave. I sent her a short recording. I said, "Hi Sarah. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to share something. I've been practicing English every day. Alone. And I'm getting better." A few hours later she called me. "Emily," she said, "your English sounds really good. Are you taking classes?" I laughed and said, "No. I just talk to myself every day." She was shocked. "Alone?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Alone. But not lonely. English is my friend now." That moment felt like magic. My cousin noticed my change. I noticed it too. I was not the same girl who froze in school. I was not the girl who only said, "Okay." I had grown. Not because someone taught me, but because I gave myself the chance to speak. I gave myself permission to try. To fail. To learn. English was no longer just a subject. It was no longer just a fear. It had become a part of me. A real part. A true friend. Chapter 3, From Practice to Real Conversations. One evening, after months of talking to myself, I looked in the mirror and asked, "Emily, what's next?" I had come far. I could speak without freezing. I could express how I felt. I could chat with customers at the coffee shop. But something inside me said, "It's time for more." My voice was ready for real people. Not just reflections and recordings. I wanted to test it in the real world. So I took my phone and typed into Google, "Free English Conversation Group United States." I didn't know what I would find. I just wanted to talk to someone. Face to face. Not face to mirror. After a few clicks, I found something. A local group that met every Saturday in Columbus. That was 2 hours away from my small town. But they welcomed new members. It was free. And it was real. My heart started to race. Should I go? All week I thought about it. I felt excited and scared. What if I couldn't understand them? What if I froze again? But then I remembered every night I had practiced alone. Every mistake I had turned into a lesson. Every time I smiled in the mirror and said, "You can do this." So I said, "Yes. I will go." Saturday morning came. I woke up early. I wore my favorite sweater. I packed my notebook and a pen just in case. I got into my car and started the long drive. The roads were quiet. I spoke to myself the whole way. "Hi, I'm Emily. Nice to meet you." Again and again. "Hi, I'm Emily. I've been practicing English for a year." Again and again. I was preparing my voice like a runner stretches before a race. When I reached the coffee shop in Columbus, my hands were shaking. I saw people through the window laughing, talking, relaxed. My stomach turned. I sat in my car for a few minutes holding the steering wheel tightly. A small voice in my head whispered, "You can leave. Just drive back." But a louder voice said, "You didn't come this far to stop now." So I took a deep breath and walked inside. A kind woman saw me and smiled. "You must be Emily," she said. "Welcome." She gave me a name tag. I held it in my hand and smiled shyly. Then I joined one of the small circles. They were already talking. I listened first. Then it was my turn. My heart pounded like a drum. But I stood up, looked at everyone and said, "Hello, my dear friends. I'm Emily. I've been practicing English alone for a year. Today I want to meet real friends." There was silence. Then came claps, smiles, nods. I felt my face turn red. But my heart was glowing. We started chatting in pairs. Each pair had 5 minutes. My first partner was a man named Daniel. He asked me, "What do you do?" I said, "I work at a coffee shop. I love making lattes." Then I asked him, "What do you do?" He smiled and shared his story. We talked. Really talked. It was not perfect. I paused sometimes. I repeated words. But it was real. It was alive. And I was part of it. For the first time I felt the joy of a real conversation. It was not like talking to my mirror. It was not like shadowing YouTube. It was better. There was laughter. There were new faces. There was connection. I was not just practicing. I was communicating. And it felt like flying. After the group, someone said, "Hey, we have a Facebook page. We meet online every week too. You should join." I said yes. I went home that evening, tired, but full. My voice had found a place in the world. Not just in my room, not just in my notebook, but out there with others. Now when I look back, I smile. My journey was not perfect. It was not fast. I didn't have a teacher. I didn't have a partner. I only had myself, my phone, my voice, and my dream to speak. But that was enough. I made mistakes. I said wrong words. I felt scared, but I didn't stop. I kept going. And that made all the difference. So if you are watching this and you feel alone in your English practice, I want to tell you something. You are not alone. Your voice matters. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need a perfect accent. You don't even need another person at first. You just need to begin. Talk to yourself. Talk to your mirror. Talk to your phone. But most of all, believe in your voice. Mistakes are not the end. They are steps. Each mistake is a teacher. Each try is progress. And each word you speak brings you closer to fluency. I started alone. I stayed patient. And I found my voice. You can too.